Florida, the land of sun-soaked beaches, glittering nightlife, and magical theme parks. It's the ultimate dream, right? But what if I told you that beneath this postcard-perfect image lies a reality that's anything but paradise? Behind the luxury resorts and million-dollar mansions, millions of Floridians are struggling, crushed by rising rents, stagnant wages, and a cost of living that's spiraling out of control. In the Panhandle, 1 in 4 people lives below the poverty line. Families are choosing between food and shelter, while just miles away, tourists sip cocktails in beachfront cabanas. Here's the hard truth. Florida's sunshine hides deep shadows. So, is the Sunshine State really a paradise, or is it leaving too many people behind? And what does this mean for Florida's future as its economy booms, but its people struggle to keep up? Stay with us as we pull back the curtain on Florida's untold story, the wealth, the struggles, and what it's going to take to turn things around. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps us uncover the stories that matter. Let's get into it. Florida is America's playground, the place where retirees find serenity, tourists find excitement, and businesses find opportunity. On the surface, it's the perfect picture of prosperity. But today, we're peeling back the layers to reveal a side of Florida most people don't talk about: the struggles of everyday Floridians living in the shadow of the state's booming economy. For decades, Florida has been a magnet for people chasing the dream: stunning beaches, warm weather, and a promise of opportunity. And for some, that dream has delivered. The state rakes in over $100 billion annually from tourism alone, fueled by hotspots like Disney World, Miami's nightlife, and the Florida Keys. But while tourists splash cash on theme parks and luxury vacations, many Floridians are barely scraping by. The Panhandle, for instance, struggles with some of the highest poverty rates in the country. Imagine this. While one part of the state hosts luxury yachts and Michelin-starred restaurants, another part is home to families struggling to keep their lights on. Here's a staggering stat. 1 in 4 people in the Panhandle lives below the poverty line. Think about that for a moment. In one of the most glamorous states in the U.S., nearly a quarter of this region's residents are struggling just to survive. Let's start with housing. Florida's housing costs are soaring, with rents climbing by over 20% in some areas just in the last couple of years. In major cities like Miami, it's now common for families to spend over 50% of their income just on rent. That's well above the recommended 30% threshold, leaving little room for groceries, healthcare, or savings. And while housing costs have skyrocketed, wages barely budged. Florida's minimum wage is inching up, currently at $12 an hour, but it's still far behind what's needed to live comfortably in most cities. It's no wonder so many Floridians are feeling trapped. But housing is just one piece of the puzzle. Florida's economy thrives on tourism, but there's a downside. Many of the jobs created by this industry are seasonal and low-paying, offering little stability for workers. From hotel staff to restaurant servers, these workers are the backbone of Florida's economy, but they're often stuck in a cycle of financial uncertainty. Let's break it down. A waiter working during Florida's peak season might earn decent tips, but what happens when the tourists leave? That income dries up, leaving thousands of workers scrambling for side hustles or relying on savings, if they're lucky enough to have any. And it's not just wages. Many tourism-based jobs don't come with benefits like health insurance or retirement plans. For workers, this creates a precarious existence, where one unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, can push them over the edge. Florida's housing market isn't just being driven by locals. Real estate speculation has turned many communities into playgrounds for investors. Properties are being snapped up by corporations and turned into short-term rentals through platforms like Airbnb. While this might be great for vacationers, it's squeezing out long-term renters and first-time home buyers. Here's how it plays out. An investor buys a property in a quiet neighborhood and turns it into a short-term rental. Suddenly, locals are competing with tourists for housing, and prices skyrocket. Communities that were once vibrant and stable now feel transient, with fewer long-term residents investing in local schools, businesses, or infrastructure. Let's not forget Florida's retirees. The state's warm climate and senior-friendly communities have made it a retirement mecca. While retirees boost the economy by spending on healthcare, housing, and leisure, they also bring challenges. Healthcare systems are feeling the strain. With an aging population, there's a skyrocketing demand for doctors, nurses, and long-term care facilities. At the same time, the influx of retirees can divert resources from younger families who also need affordable housing, childcare, and education. Then there's Florida's Achilles heel, hurricanes. As storms become more frequent and severe, the state's rapid development is making the situation worse. Wetlands, which used to act as natural storm buffers, are being replaced by housing developments. This leaves communities more vulnerable to flooding, storm surges, and billions in damage. And here's the kicker. Florida's disaster response has been criticized for being reactive rather than proactive. After every major storm, billions are spent on recovery. But investments in resilient infrastructure, like flood-proof housing or reinforced power grids, remain inadequate. For low-income families, rebuilding is especially hard, often leaving them in even more precarious situations. So, what can Florida do to address these challenges? Let's look at 3 critical areas. Affordable housing. The state needs stronger protections for renters and incentives for developers to build affordable housing, not just luxury condos. Economic diversification. Tourism can't carry the state forever. Investing in emerging industries like tech, renewable energy, and manufacturing could create stable, high-paying jobs. Resilient infrastructure. Building for the future means planning for the reality of climate change. That means better flood defenses, sustainable development, and smarter disaster preparedness. The Sunshine State faces a crossroads. Will it continue to cater to tourists and the ultra-wealthy while leaving many residents behind? Or will it rise to the challenge and create a more equitable future for everyone who calls Florida home? Let us know what you think in the comments. What should Florida's leaders prioritize? Housing, wages, disaster planning? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Before you go, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the issues shaping our world. Hit that like button if this video opened your eyes to a different side of Florida. And don't forget to share it with someone who loves the Sunshine State but might not know the whole story.